My name is Craig Woods. I'm joined today by my good friend Leanne Dusabek and Anthony Andrews. And we're going to be talking about what's going on in the remote workspace around secure file sharing and backup, and introduce some important new ways to use SecuriSync to help. So first, for housekeeping, we have a very short amount of time today, 30 minutes. We're going to go through a lot of material. I want to make sure that you're able to get the most out of this. I'll be talking about follow-up at the end of this, but please let us know how things are going during the webinar by using the features that are built in. And in particular, if you use the Q&A button to enter questions, then we'll try to answer those as we go along. We have hopefully some time at the end, but we definitely are very, very interested in your questions and following up with you. So if we're not able to address your specific question during the session, please either make a note, enter the question in the Q&A, or request a follow-up, and we'll be getting into that more as we go along. We're going to talk about some of the specific challenges that we've seen posed by remote work that are relevant to files and work products, sharing and backup. Leanne is going to talk about some of the new capabilities that we've launched with SecuriSync that are especially critical for a lot of remote work scenarios. And then we're going to talk about some of the other principles that are important in using SecuriSync and ShareSync for remote work. And throughout this discussion, I'm going to be referring to SecuriSync, but of course I mean SecuriSync as well as ShareSync, our branded, co-branded, gray label version of the product for partners that are using the PLR model. So everything that I'm going to be talking about applies to both, and I'll be talking at the end about resources that are available to both. And I'll wrap up with some of the special offers and resources that we're making available to help you right now and that are relevant to remote work, and then hopefully we'll have time for Q&A, but we're going to try to keep this to 30 minutes. Okay, so let me start with some of the things that we're seeing. You know, like many of you, I think we've all seen significant changes in the work environment and infrastructure. You know, for example, I'm doing as much work now on my personal desktop as I am on my company-issued laptop. So it's really gone to a BYOD and a very unpredictable mix of devices that people have to use. And there's good and bad to that. The good is that most people have a plethora of options, but the bad is that it's really hard to manage them and configure them. And for example, while I'm satisfied with my security on my personal machines, it's definitely not something that our security team has vetted and would consider standard. And so dealing with the security issues, the availability issues, the maintenance issues and compatibility and installation, provisioning, and sharing using all of these things, all of a very unpredictable wide range of devices is a challenge that's kind of new for a lot of organizations. Second is the network availability now is something that you can count on even less than you could before. You know, our team considers home networks to be essentially compromised and equivalent to being on a network at a coffee shop. So there's definitely security implications. There are also bandwidth implications. So the move to people using home networks as part of the mix for connectivity creates convenience. It works, but it has its own set of liabilities and performance characteristics that make it very important to bring into what you're covering as you're setting up a network. And you know, the way that we're working now, you can't look over somebody's shoulder to take notes on working together at all, right? Everybody's working remote, and so now is a time when collaboration has really come to the fore, and the need to do things like co-editing, make sure that you're both working on the latest version of a file, that you're distributing that correct version, sharing folders of work projects is more important than ever. Another super important trend is that we've seen that some organizations that were relying on network map folders and file servers, which were working in an internal environment, are really posing difficulties now that everybody is remote. And the challenge of providing remote access to those, both in terms of bandwidth, licensing, and performance usability is a huge challenge. And so we're seeing a lot of organizations that are struggling with adapting content that was managed by their file server to a new environment where the only way that people can connect dependably is over the cloud. And extending VPNs in terms of licensing and bandwidth is very problematic because file access is about the last thing that you want to be doing over your VPN if you also have people logging in to try to run internal applications on it. And finally, this is about the last time when IT organizations and you want to be involved in trying to help people with downtime, with lost or stolen devices, with suspected infections. And so there's definitely an increased vulnerability to the kinds of problems that were not much fun to work with before, but now because you're remote and it's hard to go out and visit customers and they're dispersed broadly, it's even more difficult. So the answer is really, how do you address these problems in a way that is simple, as easy for you to deploy as possible, that addresses the security requirements that your customers need, that gives you the flexibility to handle all of these options and protect them, and do it in an environment that is now really for many organizations fully remote. Okay, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Boyan, and Boyan's going to talk about how SecuriSync can help address these challenges.
Thanks, Craig. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll spend just a minute or two talking about the product itself and its capabilities for those of you that haven't used or sold the product, and then we'll kind of tie it all together and give you some best practices around how to use the product actually to solve this remote work challenge. So SecuriSync is essentially a file sharing and backup product. It's our own proprietary technology, and it's sort of built upon 4 key pillars. One is make the product really easy to use, and one of its key capabilities is allowing users to access their files from literally anywhere, so any device, Mac, Windows, mobile, web portal. And we make it really easy for them to create content, share content, manage their files, and engage in even some sort of sophisticated collaboration. It's cloud-based, so unlike an on-prem file server, right? As an administrator, you don't need to worry about managing storage. We do that on your behalf. You simply manage a storage quota for that particular account, and as we may talk about later, we have an unlimited option, which kind of unlocks ability for users to put as much of their important files on this platform as possible. That's kind of pillar number 1. Data access, secure data access without the need of VPN across any device, ubiquitous, simple, cloud-based, sort of the essential tool that you would need in to enable a modern workforce to be productive, but especially so in a remote work scenario. Now, secondly, and we do this very uniquely, we combine backup and data protection features within a file sharing platform. That is to say, we're not really providing a file sharing platform, we're providing a file management platform, because we give you ability to access, share, protect, and backup, and then we'll talk about security as a separate segment. So we really try to think about what it would take for us to be the only place where a business manages their files, and backup is sort of an essential part of that story. So that's built in, and it enables administrators like yourselves to set policies across all users of the organization and instantly establish backup for their devices. And then what's sort of the real point of this is we give you a recovery path from any data loss scenario, and that becomes even more important when you start talking about users using their personal devices, BYOD, endpoints that you don't manage firsthand. You'd want to be able to have this kind of control, and especially to be able to do it remotely, because it's hard to reach some of these people. They're no longer coming to the office. You need to be able to do this unmasked through an administrative portal. Now, the third pillar is around security and control. So I kind of touched on it. We invest quite a bit in this area around data privacy. Each customer gets their own encryption keys. We're, I think, the only vendor that's partnered with an advanced anti-malware platform in Bitdefender, and we offer this for free to all of our customers. So all the files that are put on the platform are scanned for malware and viruses, and then there's a whole set of controls and policies available to administrators to fine-tune the settings and preferences for each user without needing to kind of do that on a user-by-user basis. So those are kind of the 3 in-product pillars, and then there's partners. We look at ourselves as the only partner-first file sharing platform. So there's a lot that's sort of built both into programs with the branding that Craig mentioned, as well as in the product to make this the best choice for partners. We don't have time to get into real depth on some of these, but Anthony's here with us, and we'll have a call out later on where you'll be able to engage with him, and him and his RNRCs can walk you through sort of the product features in a more in-depth demo. So Craig, why don't we maybe advance and talk about how this set of capabilities can really sort of cater to a remote work scenario. Thank you. So hopefully what I described sounds like a simple, secure, flexible file sharing solution for remote workers, because that's what we sort of pride ourselves on, and that was one of the key design principles that I talked about. It allows our partners to offer a single solution that delivers sort of file sharing and enables productivity. At the same time, it backs up files, and most importantly, it enables sort of layer security across the board that makes everybody sort of feel comfortable and at peace, knowing that their files are in a platform that sort of puts that at the forefront, that being the security of content. We talk about backups, really important. I think the likelihood of people catching viruses and doing awkward things with their files when they're at home without ability to get access to IT support really quickly is even higher now. And we have ability to roll back things. It's that simple. Whatever happens and it's bad, you want to sort of negate it, you can roll it back to a previous time. So we have a set of tools that really save time in all these scenarios, and I think that goes a long way in being able to sort of support what's likely for many of you a large number of end users now working from from their home offices or bedrooms in some cases. We talked about ultimate flexibility. So VPN is a real challenge. We did some research, I believe it was a year and a half ago. It was about the number of Windows file servers that are still deployed within North America, and the number was astounding. It was tens of millions of Windows file servers, and for most of these businesses, they were still the primary place where they housed, managed, and accessed their files from. And as Craig mentioned, now you suddenly push all these employees back to their home and put them on VPN, they're likely to get really shoddy connections. Most of them are essentially going to be in an unworkable sort of environment. And so this is a very relevant issue. And so being able to extend content without a VPN securely to these end users is a real advantage. And this is kind of the big premise of our product, alleviating this networking complexity. So it enables effective work wherever you are, including remotely. I've been a remote worker for some years now, so I can attest to this. Gives you tools to prevent downtime, and whether it's caused by user errors or viruses, and it allows you to do this instantly. So it gives you that peace of mind, and most importantly, allows everybody to continue working without skipping a beat when it comes to files access and sharing and so forth. Let's. Greg, if you'd like to advance, I'll talk about some new features that we just recently released that really sort of cater to this use case, and then I'll talk about some best practices, how to sort of bring all this together. And for those that have this issue in your customer bases, you can take some steps to offer SecuriSync to them and make their lives a lot easier during this period of time. So one of the things we just released actually last Tuesday is a new, or I'll call it next gen Windows desktop app. We're calling it a streaming application. For those of you that have sold the product before or used it, you're probably accustomed to what we've been calling a file syncing app. That's an app that most of our customers are on, and as its name implies, it tends to sync files to your device unless you tell it not to. And so it's done a great job sort of doing that. But we saw that there's sort of a change in it's a technology trend, right? That most new PCs are being built with thinner, faster hard drives, and end users only need more and more access to files. So our kind of working set of files is only growing over time, while our ability to sync it down to some device is diminishing, right? So we've been working on this app for some time now, and we just made it generally available on Tuesday. it basically does the reverse of the syncing app. It behaves a la network map drive in that it presents all of the user's files within Windows Explorer, but it only downloads files that users click to open. So the way I like to position it is only the files that you need are downloaded locally. And so for really heavy users that tend to have hundreds of gigs of data that they need to have access to, this is a huge difference maker. And if you sort of correlate these benefits to remote work, this will optimize network usage. So poor home Wi-Fi, right, will really struggle with a lot of data being synced. Now it can be streamed, so we can optimize that. And then we still dealing with local drive disk availability, so we solve that instantly as well. We believe that over time, this will be the way most people are going to want to access their files. At the time of the launch, so dating back to last week, we made this available to new customers. Any new customer that buys the product will get an app that gives them an option to either use the syncing or the streaming mode. They can choose their preference there. As we move forward, we'll likely go and push this onto the existing base. Eventually, I think this will be the norm, so that everybody ends up consuming their files this way, because it's, again, much more beneficial from a bandwidth and network usage perspective. Also, what Craig usually likes to say is it's also more secure because I'm not syncing all of this corporate content to a device. And in the case of remote work, that could be an unmanaged device, right? It could be my loaner PC or my home PC that suddenly it's got all these mission critical files downloaded to it. The streaming app kind of alleviates that because only a small subset of those files would come down. We also have ability to clear the local cache, where if over time you click to open enough files, right, the usage is going to go up. There's a way to just kind of remove all local instances and go back to these virtual links of sorts, files that are there but aren't really taking up space, if that makes sense. And so we have a demonstration in the bottom of the slide here, what it looks like, right? When you have streaming, you save probably somewhere in the 90th percentile of storage, and that's over time, right? That's when you work a lot with your files. Initially, you're at zero kilobytes of usage. And so we feel like this is a huge step for the product in general, because this is where, again, most of our future customers, I think, will land. And in the case of remote work, we believe it to be an essential tool, like to enable some of these home workers to work efficiently with their files. This is what you should be deploying, as you'll see in one of the slides that we have here that include the recommendations for how to sort of approach this. Great, thank you. The other change we made is we modernized our web experience. So this is one of, I think, several steps. Our plan is to do a couple things. One is obviously make the experience better. We also have a really sort of aggressive roadmap as far as the web in terms of features and capabilities, and you'll see things kind of trickle through the end of the year. At first glance, we made it prettier, more modern, but the functionality is similar, minus a few differences. We've introduced a recents page that drives people to easily sort of access the recent documents, and we have something called followed, which is ability to kind of pin your most popular folders, so you don't have to search through a long list of files. So it's about creating additional efficiency for users that have a lot of content in their file spaces. Great, Craig, if you would. So just kind of tying all this together, right? So you're probably asking, okay, so I've got a few customers with file servers. 30 of them connected over VPN. They can't download a single file, right? Or the VPN is dropping and it's just not practical or workable. What do I do? And so what I'd like to do is just share some kind of general guidance and offer, again, subsequent follow-up calls with our SE teams and Anthony that can kind of yield more practical advice based on your specific situation. Generally, though, right, time is of the essence. If people aren't able to work today, we need to make a move quickly. So we don't want to be planning a long migration. We want to try to identify a working set of data that most users need on a daily basis. In some of our previous analysis, we found that 5% of all data on a file server is a working set. Sometimes less than that. Like a lot of it is old files that you don't need. So we don't need to migrate that right away. We're going to focus on some actively used folders, right? And once we identify that, we have a tool that many don't know about. It's called the File Server Sync app. It's an application that's specifically designed to run on Windows file servers, and one of its functions is a migration. So it can be used to sort of seamlessly migrate this working set of content off of a on-prem or cloud-based file server to an administrative SecuriSync account. So the first thing we want to do is bring the files that are there into our platform, and then from there we basically extend access to this content on SecuriSync or ShareSync to all of the end users. And there's obviously a way to set permissions, and I've got a few tips in there. If you're managing some larger accounts, we can synchronize Active Directory. We also have some special handling of Active Directory groups. We can convert that to sharing groups. It's all the things that can save you time, right, to readiness. And we can also auto accept all of the shares that you're going to send out. So, because typically there's an invitation and the user needs to accept it, we can automate that for you. Then secondly, you just want to learn, how all of the different policies in the product work and tune these specifically for each account. Like there's some no-brainers, right? Review our backup capabilities and make sure you enable those, because they can save you weeks of time down the road. Configure a sharing policy and enable our anti-malware protection. And then lastly, your last step is deploying apps. And so I'm suggesting obviously leading with a streaming app, because it's more efficient for home networks and personal PCs. And we have some tools that allow you to kind of do that en masse. And then we have some training portals that you can simply forward to your end users to get them up to speed quicker and sort of get in the way of too many questions coming through your support. So I know I'm probably running a little bit over, Greg.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Good. That's all right. Good stuff, Glenn. Good stuff. And we'll try to leave a couple minutes for the Q&A. But to kind of put this in context, I think that what we've seen over the last couple of weeks is something that none of us have experienced before in that time frame. Usually when we're looking at the way people change their behavior in their work environments, it takes years to see the transition to relying on mobile devices, to move from laptops to mobile devices, to move from desktops to laptops. And we've seen radical changes over just a period of weeks. I think the most important point is that we're dealing right now with problems that we've got to solve, but where is it going to go to in the longer term? And I think that once we're through this initial phase of making sure that people have what they need, the question is going to be clearer about what are we going to go back to? What will the new normal be? And I think that one of the things that is already becoming clear is that people are starting to expect that all of these options should be available to them moving forward. And that the way that they configure their workforce, the way that they need to be able to share work and collaborate is definitely going to be a lot more flexible moving forward than it was. So we're going to come back from this, from stay at home and shelter in place to, I think, a different world where we won't be doing that, but including remote work and making sure that you can support remote work models as part of the services that you're providing is going to be an assumption that clients are going to make. So there's an opportunity to make sure that you're building your practices around this. And while this is highly urgent today, I think there's going to be a long-term requirement here to fold this into the way that you're providing technology to clients. So I think that's potentially good news and a benefit of this shift. Okay. Just by way of mentioning, when we were talking about SecuriSync and ShareSync, all of these capabilities are available to intermediate customers using Exchange, without or not using Exchange, and they're also included with Unite. And in fact, we're going to be releasing the integration of SecuriSync into Unite shortly in ways that are going to make it even more interesting. But all of this applies whether you're using Unite or you're using Exchange or you just want to use it on its own. SecuriSync special offers. We've got a 2-month promo that's in place now, 2 months free for any SecuriSync pay plan, which is a 10, 100, or unlimited capacity plan. And many of our partners that use SecuriSync got familiar with it through the NFR, not for resale program, which means that SecuriSync is free for partners. And that means that you have access to this technology for your own business, you can get under the hood and see how it works. And there was a quick question about, will we be providing the stack? Yes, we'll be providing the stack and recording to everybody after this presentation. To help with the remote work and marketing side, we have campaigns in place. We have a ransomware campaign that's available in SecuriSync and ShareSync versions. And we also have a new remote work data sheet for you to help you that's available in both the SecuriSync and ShareSync version. So with that, I'd like to do a quick poll for follow-up. We're going through this really quickly. We're really glad to have Anthony on the line, Anthony Andrews, as one of our important resources as a SecuriSync product specialist. So please let us know here if you'd be interested in some additional one-on-one time. Anthony can work with you, make sure you've got access to the assets that you need, and if you have specific questions that you want to follow up with, then we're happy to do that. William, there was a question that came in about the Mac version for streaming. So I don't know if you want to talk about what the roadmap looks like for that.
Yes, absolutely. So the streaming app is available only on Windows right now. Mac is in development. There is a syncing application for Mac that works natively and works really well. And so our customers will use that until the Mac version is available. We believe that we'll have it available sometime in Q4. So that's our current timeline.
Great. Hey, there was a couple other questions about streaming. One was whether streaming works with programs like InDesign that have file references. I don't know if you know that.
I don't know off the top of my head specifically with InDesign, but I'll say this: the emulation is so deep, right, within the file system that most apps can't tell the difference. There are some apps that can tell the difference, and we have to build some special support for them. I don't know how InDesign behaves specifically. Would love to try it, but generally, like Excel references or other apps that have references that call for that kind of thing, they work smoothly because the emulation is so deep that all of these files that aren't actually downloaded still are presented as real files to these apps. They just happen to download on demand.
Boy, and there's another question about using streaming with the unlimited. How does this affect an unlimited user versus a 2 gig user if they're just streaming?
It has no bearing on actual usage. Streaming versus syncing is simply a difference in approach on how your desktop app operates, right? How it accesses the files. Storage is metered against total usage at the account level. So somebody could use the web app very extensively and have terabytes of storage there without even having a desktop experience. It's rare, but it's possible. Package is a package. If you need a lot of files, you need to go to unlimited. If the 2 gig is basically kind of a teaser offer.
Okay. Hey, Boyne, there's a question about how to get to the streaming app, where it can be found, how the partner can access it.
So essentially, any place where you can download the app right now, download our ShareSync. If you're a PLR partner, ShareSync Windows app, that app is now a streaming app or includes a streaming mode. So control panel, and we'll follow up with you separately directly. But the control panel, howto.sharesync.com website, those are our latest apps. And as part of the installation, the user will need to choose syncing or streaming mode. So both modes are actually bundled into the same download. So if you're looking for a specific streaming app download, you won't find it. It's actually the app that's posted for our Windows desktop.
Okay. All right. Hey, I think we're out of time. We really appreciate the questions. We will follow up with all of these. Thank you for entering the poll requests for follow-up meeting. We'll also be, as a follow-up, providing access to some of the assets that I've talked about. There's an online security toolkit that includes how-to instructions for the ransomware settings and other SecuriSync security details.